the Niners injuries, they just kind of go hand in hand. It's that Rocky meme of them just kind of like shaking hands, injuries, Kyle Shanahan just right here. Sorry, The Predator. I'm mixing up my 1980s action movies. The Predator, not Rocky. Don't kill me in the
Rocky's
comments over that one.
1976, Juju. 1976.
Whatever, and anything that has that kind of odd tint of movie is like an 80s movie to me, and anything that's black and white is basically a 50s movie. That's how it works for me in my mind. But anyway, guys, the main story, let's not bury the lead here. Niners fan here, got the helmet on my desk. Trey Lance is done for the year, and Kyle and I, we've kind of had different thought processes through this whole process of how to develop Lance. Are the Niners developing Lance well? I was shocked that Jimmy G came back. Kyle was shocked that Jimmy G came back. I was less shocked in a way, but I knew it was a possibility. I just kind of was waiting to see how the situation played out. And sure enough, it worked out. $6.5 million incentive laden deal. Now that's going to get pumped up to $17 million because he's going to play. Trey Lance is done for the year. Jimmy Garoppolo's the starter the rest of the year as long as he can stay upright and on the field. So Kyle, how you feeling? You got a couple days to digest this one.
So if you check out the Take It Easy podcast, which I record every day, there's a 40-minute talk about this, and I waited like 72 hours to kind of process all of it. So I won't get to everything I want to say, just want to direct people there just in case. Going back to stuff we talked about in the past, I thought it was insane that they would bring Garoppolo back because, I guess in hindsight later we figured out because everyone filled their backup jobs, but paying $10 million for a third-round pick where Garoppolo would only be used as a kind of distraction for Trey Lance because I believe they should have given Trey Lance the team as soon as they drafted him in 2021 and optics be damned about Garoppolo or whatever else. And if you're spending that much on a quarterback that high, you go for it. Where I didn't process this situation is the odds were so small that the 49ers would be the team that had the catastrophic injury. Even when they brought back Jimmy G for training camp, they were waiting for someone to have a catastrophic injury who would then trade for Garoppolo. The odds were so slim that the 49ers would be the team that had the catastrophic injury that in my mind, I didn't even contemplate that would be a possibility in the Garoppolo calculation. So that's where I will apologize for that. It's really good that they have Garoppolo on the roster because if there's 32 teams, the 3% chance that Trey Lance would be the quarterback who had the catastrophic injury that would leave him out for the season. The fact that it happened to San Francisco, everything worked out great because that small percentage chance ended up coming true for San Francisco.
Two things that I want to touch on that you mentioned. The idea of not going all in. They didn't go all in on Trey Lance, but they went all in on last season. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. So they went all in. They thought, we're going to roll out our best players, the players that we think give us the best chance to win. And that was Garoppolo. And I think that still carries into the 2022 season. When you ask around the team, you look at the Mike Silver reports, you listen to that locker room, there's a lot of people in that locker room that think that Jimmy Garoppolo should have been the week 1 starter, and you should maybe play the situation in reverse. And 2, I want to talk about the odds of the Niners being the one to face the catastrophic injury. Obviously, I mentioned as a joke, the kind of team odds, the random poor luck that has befallen the Niners franchise in terms of injuries. But Niners fans, unfortunately, have to come to an uncomfortable conversation about Trey Lance in terms of his health and his injury status. He's a guy that's been injured in college. He's a guy that was injured last year in minimal playing time, and he's injured this year. And add into the fact that the coach doesn't trust him enough to throw the ball, so he's running him through the middle. He's running him between the tackles and putting him at further injury risk. And that's kind of where things are with the Niners fan base in terms of the injuries and the idea of going all in. I think that right now, today, they are a better team with Jimmy Garoppolo as the starting quarterback. I think that they have the best odds to win a Super Bowl. I think what went wrong is that they just gave Trey Lance the job without any competition in training camp. I think that was the mistake.
So this is interesting because if last year going all in on Jimmy Garoppolo or going all in on the team meant Jimmy Garoppolo playing, and this year going all in meant having competition between Lance and Garoppolo, this brings up the thing I've been arguing between the 2 points, which is there's a conversation of Lance versus Garoppolo, and then there's a conversation of why did you pick Trey Lance in the first place? Why did you trade up for 3 first-round picks
because
to get him?
Because you believe he's the future, Kyle. Because you believe he's the future. And just because he hasn't played the first 2 years doesn't mean that that's still not the case. That's not still on the table. I know this isn't the 1990s anymore, But Steve Young still had to wait 6 years for Joe Montana to leave town to get into the game. And when he did, he was fantastic. He was the future of San Francisco at that point. I don't think just because we live in 2022, it just resets the entire game. We played this game for a long time.
But Shanahan and John Lynch have said publicly for months on end, the point of drafting Trey Lance was so they could get value at the quarterback position in order to pay all these other players their giant contracts. The whole point of getting him was to have the rookie contract quarterback. So this is Shanahan and Lynch saying this. So what is the point now that all three of the first round picks you could have had? So the 2021 first, the 2022 first, and the 2023 first, they will all be spent before Trey Lance plays more than 4 starts as the 49ers quarterback. And of course, they couldn't have predicted the injury this year. If you had started him from last year, week 1, and he had gotten hurt this year, perhaps they don't go as far in the playoffs. Perhaps they go further in the playoffs. You would have had the same sample size as like the Dolphins have right now on Tua. And I hear a lot of people making conclusions about what Tua is or isn't after 20 starts. If you give Trey Lance 20 starts, at least you have a better idea of what he is. Right now, you still have just as much information as you had when you drafted him in 2021.
Well, I'm playing the results here. I know what happened. We looked into that crystal ball and we know that the result was NFC Championship game appearance. But what I would say is that there's been multiple ways to carve out development of a quarterback. And it's a very new idea, the idea of just throwing a rookie out there in week 1 and just telling them fend for yourselves. And everyone said it on draft day that Trey Lance was going to be a project quarterback. Everyone knew he was going to be a project quarterback. Everyone knew that if you wanted the guy that was going to be ready day 1, yes, you draft Mac Jones. As unexciting, as unsexy as that pick would have been, you draft Mac Jones on day 1 if you want a guy that's ready to go in there. And maybe rookie year Mac Jones with the Niners offense and all that, you can make an argument. Who knows? Maybe he's in the playoffs. Maybe they win a playoff game with him. I doubt it. I don't think he would have survived the frozen tundra in Green Bay in the same way that Jimmy Garoppolo was able to navigate as a veteran. But you can make that case if we're saying that Mac Jones is just a tick below what Jimmy Garoppolo is in terms of ability. With Trey Lance, you're still hoping one day down the line, maybe he takes coming off this injury, he comes back better, 3rd year training camp. He has that Josh Allen. And yes, we can talk about value. We can talk about the value of the contract. Did you waste the rookie deal? Who cares? Let's say Jimmy Garoppolo gets you back to where you were this past season. Let's say they get back into the NFC Championship game. Is it really not worth it? You made it to 2 NFC Championship game appearances and you're still a Super Bowl contender. And if Trey Lance does have that 3rd year breakout, that 4th year breakout, you look at this 3 to 4 years of Niners football and you still think of it as a success, rather than going 7 and 10 with Trey Lance, just trying to figure it out and meander his rookie year. Maybe he gets a little bit better. Let's talk about a Tua development, gets you to 9 and 8, but you missed the playoffs this year, right? Is that, would you trade that for a couple of NFC Championship game appearances, maybe the possibility of Lombardi? Because that's still on the table, and in terms of also contract wise, salary cap wise, listen, they got Jimmy Garoppolo at a fucking bargain,
Yeah.
End of the day, like 17 million for a guy that at least has Jimmy's resume, because we can nitpick Jimmy to death. We could debate where his contract should lie. In terms of what he's done, the results compared to what his contract is, a $17 million quarterback, you got him at a bargain, one of the best bargains in the NFL. You look at some of the other quarterbacks in the league that are getting paid 20, 30 million that are less accomplished. Jimmy Garoppolo's been there, done that, and hopefully can continue to do that so long as, again, and this is factored into it, he stays upright. Part of the reason Trey Lance is even in the locker room is Jimmy Garoppolo has injury history himself. So, that's baked in. That's all things that are part of this cake of Niners football.
And this is an interesting point because you're right. It would be a success if the 49ers make 3 NFC champion or even make 3 deep playoff runs. Like they could lose in the 2nd round this year and it would be successful given all the injuries they already have. Like if they make that run, it would be successful. And at the same time, the process to get there would be incredibly fucking stupid because they should have just spent those 3 first-round picks instead of trading it for Trey Lance, which brings me to the thing that I brought up on my podcast, which is the 49ers are basically just people who's turned all their paychecks into crypto in 2021. Like they basically just spent 3 first-round picks on something that only has value because everyone agrees it has value.
Kyle, I'm going to tell you this as someone who has heard the crypto discussion for the last couple of years. Buy the dip. The dip is Trey Lance's injury. Buy that dip, and next year
But
you will be
it doesn't
rewarded. If
matter
you're in a
anymore,
dynasty fantasy football league, buy that dip that is Trey Lance. I am telling you right now, giving you some free fantasy advice on this very serious Niners football discussion.
This very serious discussion of crypto. But crypto in December of 2020, the value of crypto was one Bitcoin was worth $60,000. Today it's worth $19,050. So it's already lost 70% of its value. Even if you buy the dip, it's already lost 70% of what you would have put in back in 2021 when they traded for Trey Lance. So you've already lost 70% of the value. You just threw it away. And yes, it might work out in the end because you still have a really talented team and you drafted well for 4 years and got the greatest offensive tackle in football for a 3rd round pick. Like, it might work out. It was just a stupid way to get there because you should have drafted Devonta Smith. You should have drafted, I don't know, whoever they could have gotten late in the draft last year. You could have drafted someone this year. Like, you could have done something else if you were going to play Garoppolo anyways, because it seems like
we only nitpick the Patriots now after Tom Brady's left and look back at all these horrible draft decisions that Bill Belichick has made. But we forgive him. Patriots fans forgive him because they have, 7 championships or 6 championships with Bill Belichick in town. So I think that what it comes down to, end of the day, one way or the other, eventually Niners fans are going to start holding Kyle Shanahan accountable to winning championships because he has been kind of coasting on, obviously being in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Trey Lance bought him some time. I guess that's also part of the thing too. Was like how much could Kyle Shanahan afford to just kind of work and try to develop, because we don't really have much of a resume of him being a developmental guy. We don't have a much of a resume of him building up a quarterback. Who's the quarterback that Kyle Shanahan's built up to this point?
Kyle Shanahan has built up 0 quarterbacks. It's just he's inherited
Ryan,
guys who have
already a guy who was in NFC championship games. Sure, he won an MVP that year.
He's
but
elevated people.
He's elevated people. Jimmy Garoppolo, we say he's elevated him, but two, this is another thing that's part of the discussion. Is
his project before Matt Ryan was his project before Matt Ryan was Brandon Weeden. That was basically his project. And by the way, I just went back. You could have had Micah Parsons at pick 11. You could have had Rashawn Slater at 11.
Yes, that is fair. That is understandable. But if in year 4, because we don't know this. Hell, if I told you Jimmy Garoppolo takes him to a Super Bowl this year, then how hard is that discussion going to be next year? Like, are you just going to say Trey Lance on scholarship? That's something that's going to be part of the chaos of this situation.
But again, what was the point of getting Trey Lance in the first place? It's basically like spending your money
You want to have him on your team, in your locker room. You want to figure it out. You want to see if you can build him up. It's not like this is conclusive evidence that he's done. This is over. Trey Lance's future with the Niners is over. This is a setback. Everyone acknowledges this is a setback. This is a huge ass speed bump. But hopefully this is something that on the other side, and hopefully on the other side results in some jewelry in your pocket. But on the other side, that you have a franchise quarterback coming to your team. Sometimes you just want to get guys in the building. Like, okay, sometimes you draft a 7th round cornerback and you don't play him right away. And that you're fine with that because you drafted him in the 7th round, right? Mm-hmm. Keep him on your team a couple years, and a couple years down the road, he becomes a stud. We just kind of have to shift that expectation. Yes, you had to pay a premium to go grab him, but you got to keep him on your roster. You got to keep him in your locker room, develop him, bring him around your guys, build him up. And maybe eventually you might have to pay him more. I don't know how much you would have to pay him unless he's putting up Josh Allen numbers next year. And even then you still might be okay with that,
Yeah, but it was just so stupid in the first place because if you were going to play Jimmy 2 seasons anyways, this year is the year to get the quarterback. Or if you have 3, if you're willing to spend 3 first-round picks anyways,
no.
That's what Russell Wilson was worth.
What I think is stupid is they should have done it in reverse. If you did it in reverse, I don't think you get killed as much as you do today, as much as you do this week. If you had Trey Lance have to come in with Jimmy Garoppolo, battle it out in camp, and you just said Trey Lance is the better quarterback, let's start him, you don't get killed as much. But since you did this situation where you put Jimmy Garoppolo on the bench as the backup, now the guys in the locker room also have to question the coach. Why weren't you just starting the better quarterback from the start? Because it was clear that in those 2 games, you did not trust the playbook to be fully opened up under Trey Lance because the Niners are throwing the ball around exponentially more than they were when Trey Lance was on the field versus when he exited. I think that that's something to also kind of note. And, you know, the conversation on Bay Area Twitter is constantly, is Kyle Shanahan not as much of a genius as we think? I guess we'll find out because, you know, another thing that's following him around his Niners tenure is besides when Jimmy Garoppolo has been in the lineup, there hasn't been a lot of wins, and that's kind of spurned a lot of fans or rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. So we'll see how that develops. Anyway, I think I've said my piece with it. I would encourage everyone to check out, you know, you have 40 minutes, like you said, already recorded. Hey, we got those links in the bio. Check them out, guys. Drop in on the discussion. I know everyone has their opinion on this Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle Shanahan, 49ers mess that is. And I want to know what everyone else is feeling about it. Leave a like on the video, helps the channel. Subscribe to the channel, helps it even more. Follow us on social media, Kyle Ledbetter, Juju Talk Sports, Instagram handles right there. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you on the next one.